Hi everyone, welcome back to Family Law Assistance, and I am ridiculously excited. I'm joined here by Winston Davis, who just all-round brilliant guy. He and I have known some people from back in the day when both of us were working, doing a lot of work for a parenting charity. And Winston is a father, a husband. He's a chairman of a charity and just an all-round amazing guy. Now, one of the reasons that I've promise you I've not bribed him on here is to talk to you guys about his journey, how he ended up in 7 years of litigation, how his experience was. Now, everybody that watches this, they're all kind of been in the same boat. They're either going through that journey, they're either been through that journey, or thanks to a global pandemic, they're right in the middle of it. So Winston, tell us a little bit about your background.
Look, growing up, single parent family, mother, 3 kids, difficult childhood, whatnot. What's going on with me? Lots of stuff has gone on. I got into a lot of trouble when I was younger. I since turned my life around, and my eldest son was conceived nearly 12 years ago now. I met my wife the week after. Me and my wife hit it off. A month after us hitting it off, I get a call from my ex to tell me that she's pregnant. But we didn't know who the father was at the time, so it was agreed that I would, see how it happens, and if the child, was meant to be mine, then we'll get a DNA test done. When he was born, I was getting calls saying that he looked like me and I needed to find out. My ex didn't want to know. And then my wife became pregnant with our eldest son shortly after then. So that was the beginning of it. So some false allegations were made, and I got arrested during that first few months of my son's life. So I then in the context of my wife being pregnant, or to-be wife being pregnant, I decided, look, do you know what? Let's not continue the legal action to try and see him, because I'd started legal action through solicitors at the time.
Right.
Let's just put that on ice, because we don't know if the child's mine.
Yeah.
But I do know that you're pregnant with my child, and I need to look after you and our child that's coming. So we put it on ice for a couple of years till my eldest son was coming on 2, and then on his 2nd birthday, I then found out you can represent yourself in court. So I then put in my C100 and started doing the necessary forms, and it took me 9 months of putting in the forms to the first ever meeting with my son. It was claimed he wasn't mine, and then when trying to get the DNA test it was 3 hearings because he was sick and couldn't go to the DNA because they couldn't afford to pay for the DNA. The delay tactics. And then when I eventually met him in a car park of a contact center, the contact center was proposed by my son's mother's barrister. When we got there, the contact center was closed.
Right.
So my first meeting with my son was through a crack in the back of a car window. Wouldn't let him out of the car, and I had to just speak to him for an hour through this window and play games, and it was not ideal. And that was basically that sort of set the tone of what was going to be going on for the next 7 years.
Right.
And then we just fast forward. I mean, during that time, got a great relationship with him, had a great relationship with him, really got on with my wife and my 2 sons, so the 2nd son as well, 3rd son as well. But we got pulled to a head a couple of years ago when I had taken the matter back to court several times, been 25 hearings and whatnot, but I'd taken it back to probably the 3rd application, and I put in the C79 for enforcement, took it to a magistrate's. My son's mother had a barrister, who was a doctor-in-law, and essentially I dissected their argument of why they couldn't come to contact and what happened and whatever else. And on 14 counts that I raised, all 14 of them were proved beyond reasonable doubt. And my son's mum was fined, threatened with potentially losing custody of my son.
Yeah.
And that. So I come out of there. It was very like emotional day.
Right.
I come out of thinking, oh, someone's listening. Didn't do anything because it carried on. So back in court again a few months later, and they ordered a C-79. They said, we're really worried about your son, and we really want to consider change of residence. So the Section 37 report was collated by social services. However, social services basically turned around and said that they didn't recognise parental alienation, which is what I was saying was going on. I said my son's been alienated from me. And because they don't recognise it, she said that she's had no training in parental alienation. They don't recognise it as an organisation. And because of that, they can't say that parent alienation has taken place. Therefore, they can't say that a change of residence would be in the best interest of my son. So we go back to court now. And basically, obviously, knowing that the court's not going to go against what the social service report is, I just got to a point and said, you know what? The court can't protect my son. Social services can't protect my son. CAS can't protect my son. His mum doesn't understand the harm that's being done to him. So the only way that I, as his father, can protect him is to take myself out of the situation and to stop all contact. So that was nearly 2 years ago. And when we spoke earlier, I'd said that in that time, 2 years, to just take a step back and to reflect, it really gave me a new perspective on the whole situation. And I said, like, I support a lot of parents, mothers, fathers, with issues with their contact and trying to see their children, whatever. And I spoke to a mother last year, and she was really upset that the father of her two sons was basically threatening them with court and was using it as a sort of a weapon, and she was really upset. Yeah. And it gave me a real perspective, different kind of perspective on what it's like on the other side, as it were. And actually, because I wasn't entrenched in the legal action, entrenched in the battle to see my son, I then was able to apply it to my relationship with my son and his mother, and actually really come to realize that actually, do you know what? I wasn't innocent in all of it. And there were some things that I did, and especially in the beginning, which weren't right. And I had to take responsibility for that. And so then last year, I contacted my son's mum a few times, emailed, letters, didn't hear anything back, just saying, look, I don't want to impose, but I just want to let you know that I'm here. And last December, I contacted her to say, Christmas coming up, I'd really like to give him presents this year. And the week before Christmas, I went and met her and him, gave him his Christmas present. I hadn't seen him for nearly 2 years. And the week after, it was his birthday, and I dropped off some birthday presents. And he didn't meet me, but he called me afterwards to say thank you. Spoke to him for 5 minutes, just let him know that I love him and that I'm there for him. And it was a really beautiful sort of ending to the year, after so many years of frustration and fighting and campaigning and protesting, to then see my son and hear my son speak to me after 2 years, and just that he knows that I'm there for him. I might not have seen him since, and I may not see him again for the rest of this year or even next year, whatever, but I know that I'm there for him, that he knows that I'm there for him. And just really at peace with the whole situation at the moment.
You talk about, as a pro, C100, C79, those forms, the names of those forms just kind of trip off your tongue. But you going through that process, being sort of behind the driver's wheel, what kind of emotions were you going through from the beginning?
You mean for the court proceedings?
Right.
Oh man, it's so tough, because you've got to be, you talk about being the driver's seat, you've got to be so in control of your emotions. It's insane, because you go into court and I talk from the perspective of a father, because I know that fathers are seen as angry and aggressive, or can be portrayed as angry and aggressive.
Right.
More commonly, though, so than women. And if you go in there and you get upset, or you speak to a social worker and you get emotional, they could easily turn around and say, "Oh, you know, he's got anger issues," or you know, or even a judge could take a dislike to you. And if a judge takes a dislike to you, but that may mean that your contact that should come out of a contact center doesn't, or that you seeing your child next week happens next month or 2 months, or you know, like, so it's really like, you know, the fact that these courts are closed and they've got no accountability. They can do what they want,
Right.
and there is nothing that you can do. And if you start sharing it in a public domain, like I've got a guy who's well known in the sort of campaigning world. He inspired me a couple of years ago. No, just over a year ago, Christmas just gone. I was feeling really upset and really down, you know, and I didn't know what it was at the time. And I started having sort of outbreaks and outbursts to people, and then I realised it was Christmas coming up. I hadn't seen my son for the best part of a year, and basically this guy, he had been protesting up north, and he ended up in prison because he was starting to out the judges and the police and everybody else that's stopping him seeing his children. And he actually was put in prison for, I think, 2 or 3 months, until he had to come to trial. He represented himself, and he won in a Crown Court trial and got his freedom. And it really inspired me to sort of go out and take some action. So I dressed up in a Father Christmas outfit outside the family court and held my sign up and took some action, even though it didn't change one iota to the world. It empowered me to feel like I've done something, anything, because if not, you feel like you can't do nothing. You're powerless. So yeah, so how you're feeling that court environment, you know, you're so out of your depth, especially when you're representing yourself. People come in with these barristers and they come in with these lawyers and they're so experienced and they know all the tricks. And I got done on the tricks. You know, I didn't know about parental responsibility when I started out.
Right.
I didn't know the importance of it. So when they changed my son's name 3 times, I didn't know that I could have prevented that or protected him. You know, and all of these little things that were going on, I just didn't know. So I feel like, as much of a scary situation it was, as much of an overbearing situation it was, I think the main thing is, like, if for people that are going through it, you've got to control your emotions. You've got to be really, really prepared. You've got to be detailed, almost forensic with what you take in. You've got to be specific with what you're requesting, and you've got to be concise.
Yes.
Yeah, because there's no point writing a 3 or 4 or 5 page position statement, but because the judge has got to read how many of those today. So if you can detail it in a page, and he goes, right, okay, these are the issues, this is what he wants. Okay, great, let's get to work. You give him something to work with. You've got to give him options. If you don't give the judge options and direction, he's only going to take it from the other side if they've got a barrier start, or he's going to take it from CAFCAS, also services. So you've really got to be savvy on how you're, you know, just navigating around the system. You know, and unfortunately, so many people just don't. And one thing I find really quite sad is that so many people. One thing which is, I don't know how you do this. You've got to have such mental strength. I said I grew up in a tough environment growing up. And the things I witnessed, heard, could call me anything, and it would not pierce you know, anything from me. But if you've brought up in a more well-adjusted upbringing and whatever else, and you've not had that kind of hardship, I don't know sometimes how you would survive, maybe, because it's so tough. And mentally, you know, I see people literally just cannot take it, and we see suicide so often. You know, and they talk about suicide being the biggest killer of men. I can't remember the age now, in the 30s to mid-40s. And when you look at the percent of those that have gone through a family breakup, it's ridiculous. Yet no one wants to talk about that.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. You know, sadly, I mean, I've been doing this, well, specializing in family law now for 14 years. And yeah, the sad stories that I see and have dealt with and that touched me personally are just, it's sad that it's not been talked about a lot more. It is incredibly sad. You talk about, I remember years ago, I was lucky to have an audience with the then the president of the family division. We talked about parental alienation, which, by the way, certainly in my experience, has rocketed since a global pandemic, obviously.
Okay.
And I remember him talking about parental alienation, and I remember him saying that absolutely acknowledging that it's his existence, but the problem that he had was cascading that down to the rest of the professionals in family law. How did you, because you experienced that firsthand, aside from social workers, how did you find the courts dealing or not with parental alienation?
This is the thing, that without the money to pay for these specialist reports and specialists, forensic psychologists who can give you the quantifiable facts that parental alienation has taken place. And I've looked, you're talking 10, 20, 30,000 for these, people have got money. It's interesting because when I put up the post saying that I stopped seeing my son, a solicitor who I know, family solicitor, messaged, "Oh, Winston, why didn't you contact me?" But the thing is that obviously she's got to earn a living, and everyone that's involved in it has got to get paid. And it really comes down to, if you haven't got the paycheck to pay these people to give you the green tick that PA is taking place,
yes,
you really are fighting a losing battle, in my experience, because how do you really nail down PA without a real psychologist involved who can say it is? Because I'm just a layman. It's happened to me, but who am I to say that? I mean, even I've had people troll me and say, "Oh, nah, you're not even had PA. It's not even happened to you. And who are you to say it's happened to you? You're just another one of these people with the train saying that you've experienced it." But it's like, no. When you go through the list of what PA is, and you then think about, whoa, that's happened to me. Really early on, it was the first meeting of my son in the contact centre was say hello to Winnie, and I was just about to introduce myself as Dad.
Wow.
And yet, and 2 months later, I'm on a call with my son, and I'm saying, "Oh, what have you been up to today?" And he says, "Oh, I'm playing football with Daddy." And I says, because the new partner that come along was called Danny. So I said, do you mean Danny? In the background, Mum's saying, "Daddy, Daddy." My son says, "Playing football with Daddy." And I raised this to the court, but didn't know this was the beginning of PA.
Right, yeah.
But when I see it on the list, I was like, wow, and it's like, one of many disrupting contact, not giving emotional permission to have contact, to have that relationship. There's so many. You can just go through the list and go, yep, that's me. But to have that quantified and to have it accepted in court, especially when social services are turning around saying, "We don't have a department in this. We don't know anything about this." It's like, actually, how are we supposed to even broach this when people that are supposed to be trained in looking after the well-being of our children don't know? But what I actually think, and I said to you, I've got a different perspective than what I've had for up until 2 years ago, is that the whole thing of seeing your children, it's not a legal matter. It shouldn't be a legal matter. And it's like, my advice to anyone who wants to listen is, if you can do anything to stop going to court, don't do it. If you can do anything, whether that means swallowing your pride, swallowing your ego, whatever it takes, because the only people that really lose out, in my own experience, is the children.
Yeah.
And the only real successes that I really see without so much collateral damage is, again, the people that either have got the money or literally spend their life savings trying to see their children. And I know of a couple of people that have spent 40, 50, 60, 100,000, and they've got some semblance of a relationship because they spent that money. But then again, I know some people that spent that money and got nothing.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, if you can avoid court, avoid it.
It's funny, just a point on parental alienation. It's funny. One of the things I tell people that I help is, especially when it comes to parental alienation, it might walk like a duck, it might talk like a duck, but let's not call it a duck. You can't call it a duck. So you're almost having to sort of, like you talked about being succinct and being concise. You're making yourself the easy option for the court. You're constantly selling the solution. You're making yourself the easy solution for the court. So the court should really effectively nod, smile, and stamp. Now, you talk about being represented and self-representing. You chose to self-represent. Why was that?
Really, I think down to finances.
Yeah.
It comes down to represent yourself, spend a few £100s on applications and your time, or spend thousands just getting to court, thousands in court. And when does it end? Look, if we got say for example, we've got 25 hearings there at two grand a pop, plus another £1,000 each time to prepare it, we're easily talking 75, 80,000 pounds just in legal fees over a course of 7 years. Unfortunately, I don't have that and didn't have that financial bandwidth to afford it. I say that, however, I did have legal representation on one final hearing. My first final hearing, I had someone for the day, and I had it for, I think, another hearing. So I probably had 2 occasions where I had it in 7 years. But even after both of those, I come out thinking I could have done that myself. And even when I did the enforcement application, I don't think a barrister could have represented me better than I represented myself. Genuinely, I feel like I probably could have maybe then offered a more. You talk about options. I could have sold the solution better of what I actually wanted out of it. But no, I don't think I could. I don't think anyone could. They couldn't have the passion I had. To sometimes I had to interrupt the other barrister and say, no, sorry, but you don't actually understand what you're talking about here. This happened on this date and this date and this date. So it's a difficult one, because the judge at the last hearing, when I turned up to court and said, this is it, I'm no longer from this day forward, I read out a 5-page basically letter of complaint, I suppose it was, to say, what my grievances with the court system, and his mum and social services, I'm not going to go forward anymore. The judge was like, basically like, please, can we take this back to another hearing? Can you please go back to the original judge? And I was like, but how many more months and years are we going to lobotomize my son?
Yeah.
At the benefit of who?
Who? Yeah. So what's the future hold for you now?
So look, I mean, in terms of the relationship with my son, he's 12 at the end of this year. He knows I'm there for him. My 3 nephews live a 2-minute drive from his grandparents, where he spends a lot of time. My eldest nephew is 2 months younger than him. They're in the same area. He's got mutual friends. Some of his friends follow me on social media.
Wow.
I don't think it's going to be too long before he makes the connection with me and sees what I've been through and gone through and tried to do to try and be in his life. And I hope that one day we'll have a relationship, or more of a relationship. But I am both resigned to the fact that that may never happen, and also accepting to the fact that life doesn't work out the way you want it to. And my conscience is clear. I've fought as best I can. I can't tell you the amount of times I've come back from court and collapsed on the floor in a heap and cried my eyes out. I can't tell you the amount of times where I've driven an hour, because they used to live an hour away. I've gone to pick him up and he won't come, or he's not been let out or he's been taken from school early. I can't tell you how that feels and the pain of that, how that feels. But I do know what I've done. I do know what I've been through. So I hope that, you know, that one day he will respect that and want to have a relationship with it. But if he doesn't, there's no more than I can do, and I've just got to say it is what it is, and do the best that I can do with both my 2 younger sons and my 3 nephews who I raised like my own, and to the boys in my charity and the other people that I pour my energy and love into in the best way I can, to be the best version of myself as I can. And that's it, because we're all gonna die soon. I say this quite a bit when I have interviews with people. I say, look, we're gonna die. Me and you are gonna die. Whether it's tomorrow, next month, next year, 5 years, 10, 20 years. It's not a long time. You got to go back 20 years ago. You remember it like yesterday. 20 years from now, if we're lucky, we're still alive. But it's not a long time. So while you're here, living with regrets and feelings of, oh, why, why? You know what? Yeah, they're our children. Yeah, we love them. And I would give my life up this second for my son if it meant him living another day. But there's got to be a line where you draw and you say, I've done my best. I can do no more. I love you, but I'm going to let you go with love. And I will be here to receive you with love. And if you don't come back, I'll still have that love.
Winston, thank you so much. The guys and girls that will be watching this will be absolutely touched and will relate to what you're saying. You know, some of the things and the stuff that you talk about is stuff that, of course, as you know, parents across the land are going through at the moment. And certainly now, I guess it's harder because you know, when we think about most of our communication is non-verbal, and then you're stuck on a telephone hearing when you've only got that much of your communication. You know what it's like being in front of a judge. You know, they miss out on the eyeball rolling, maybe the silent puffing, you know. Yeah. We've all been there.
I know.
So I think it's kind of tough in these crazy times, but you know, I think some good has always come out of it. I mean, I laugh and joke, and people who watch me know that I bang on forever. It's one of my favorite drums to bang. Is that the courts have been dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century. I mean, service by documents via email. It's voodoo.
I know, crazy.
You know?
Crazy.
And then we've got like sort of virtual. It's funny. I see judges who a lot of judges are quite senior in years, and just to sort of sit back and watch them. What button do I press? I don't know if you've seen it. Just as a quick one, I don't know if you've seen. There was an American Zoom court hearing, and one of the barristers or the lawyers had his cat filter on, and the cat.
No, I haven't seen
viral. It. And he's got, you know, this was a really sort of pompous kind of elderly barrister, and he's just there going, "Yeah, sir, I'm not a cat." He's got this cute. Oh my God! Quality. I could replicate that. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Pop your questions down in the comments below. Winston, from the bottom of my heart, I saw you at Now What Live. I did this time last year, wasn't it?
About a year ago, yeah. God. Crazy.
God.
Time is just look again. How quick is time going? Yeah.
Right.
Time is of the essence. We've got to live life now, today.
I couldn't agree more. From the bottom of my heart, Winston, thank you so much.
Thank you.